Also, thank you. Also, in case that you have the questions that are not related to this training, but in general are related to whatever we were doing with assessments, everything with links is here, and it shows us exactly the flow chart, right? Everything is in ACE manual that's going to be attached also to our next training. And Cormac, you're back. Thank you.
No problem. And I overheard some of that conversation there. When I'm talking about targets, I'm talking about for this lesson, the questions that we're going to ask that we're trying to teach the student to answer, right? So this lesson is teaching answering social questions. We're going to teach the student to be able to answer the question, what is your name? Where do you live? How old are you? Okay. So for this third page in that PDF document, this is the brief sheet. This is that data sheet that we've generated in previous trainings, okay? And this is a data sheet specifically for the 3 questions that are in sublevel 1.01. Those 3 questions are, what is your name? Where do you live? How old are you? Okay? Now on this data sheet, from that full lesson plan, from that lesson plan that we saw in the first 2 pages of this PDF, we see the teacher behavior, the student behavior, what the prompt type and fading procedure is, what to do when the student responds correctly or incorrectly, and then we see our criteria for prompt fitting. Now that criteria is going to be important because I'm basically going to tell a story right now, how we get from baselining these targets with these students, these 3 questions, whether the student can answer these questions or not, through to us teaching he or she, well, in this case, a he, to answer those questions, okay? So if I scroll down, you can see that I've already filled in this data sheet. This is a pretend data sheet that I filled in some data for, okay? Again, the 3 questions that we're teaching the student to answer is, what is your name? That's target A. Where do you live? That's target B. And how old are you? That's target C. And we're going to teach the student to answer these 3 questions at the same, we're teaching the student to answer these 3 questions during the course of our training procedure, our teaching procedure, okay? Now, the first data block that you're seeing here on the left-hand side is a baseline data block, okay? This data block, this baseline session was conducted on October 24th, okay? It was conducted by teacher KW in classroom 1, that's CRM, excuse my awful handwriting, okay? The prompt type is listed as NA, okay? Because this is a baseline session. We're not prompting in baseline. We are assessing to see if the student can answer these 3 questions consistently. And we can see here that he cannot, okay? He answered, he responded correctly in 2 of the 9 trials, okay? Trial 1 and trial 6, those are the 2 trials that have the pluses, okay? The rest of the trials, he responded incorrectly. You might be asking yourself, why has Cormac circled the minus? That's a little thing that I did when I was a teacher at NECC. Okay, you don't have to circle the minuses. It's just visually a little bit easier to see those minuses, because that's going to be important to tell us when or when not we're going to fade the prompt when we get into teaching. Okay, now in some cases you might run 1 baseline session, some cases you might run 2 baseline sessions, some cases you might run 3 baseline sessions. You guys will decide what works best for your classroom, your students, your procedures. For this student, we're going to run 2 baseline sessions. Okay, baseline 1, he got 2 out of 9. Baseline 2 is the middle data block here, okay? It was implemented on October 25th, again by teacher KW, okay? Again, this was in classroom 1. No prompt is listed, NA, because again, it's another baseline session. You can see that we circled BL for baseline. In the second baseline session, he responded correctly in 1 trial of our 9 trial teaching session, okay? So 1 out of 9 correct. Clearly, our student does not have the skill. He cannot answer these 3 questions correctly and consistently. So we're going to teach him, okay? That's our first teaching session on the right-hand side, the right-hand data block, okay? We've circled training. We are teaching him to respond correctly to these 3 questions, okay? This session was implemented on October 25th. The teacher this time was GM, okay? Different teacher implementing this teaching session, and this teacher is starting at prompting step 0. If we scroll up just to see what that means, the prompt type is a verbal prompt, and prompting step 0 means that we are immediately prompting the student to engage in the correct response, okay? So for that first trial, target C, we are saying, how old are you? And immediately prompting the correct response. Let's pretend our student is 5 years old. How old are you? 5. If the student can follow that verbal prompt, he's going to say 5. And in this case, he did, because we have a plus P. Okay, the student responded correctly, 5. Okay, yay, nice job, high five, token, reinforcer, all that good stuff. We're going to record a plus P for that response. He responded correctly with that prompt, with our immediate verbal prompt. Okay, and that was the case for the rest of the trials in this 9 trial teaching session. Okay, this 9 trial teaching session at prompting step 0. Okay, now let's have a quick look up at the criteria to feed help, to feed the prompt. We are going to feed the prompt when the student responds correctly. 89% of trials, that can be correct independent, pluses, or correct prompted, that's your plus P. And if the student performs at that criteria for 1 session, that's what's listed there, we are going to feed the prompt. We are going to go from our immediate verbal prompt to our 2-second delayed verbal prompt. Okay, so this data sheet only has 3 data blocks. I'm going to scroll to the next page in our PDF, which is page 4. And this is, I'm just going to blow it up so you can see it. This is one of those generic data sheets that I talked about in one of our last trainings. Okay, it doesn't have the teaching procedures on it. That's our generate data sheet that we can do. This data sheet, just to help tell the story, just has all it's just all data blocks. Okay, but we're going to pay attention to the instructions that are listed on that first page, and more and importantly, the criteria for prompt feeding. Okay, I'm going to zoom in again. As I've already said, our student just met criteria to feed the prompt, to go from prompting step 0 to prompting step 1. So the next teaching session after October 25th was on October 26th. Okay, KM is implementing this teaching session. Again, we're in classroom 1. The trial type is a training trial. Again, we're at prompting step 1. Okay, we're at a 2-second delay. 2-second verbal delay, again, asking the same 3 questions. You can see that in this teaching session, the student has a mixture of correct responses and incorrect responses. He engages in 1 incorrect response, okay? Trial 6, he engaged in an incorrect response, okay? When we asked, what is your name? Okay? The responses that he made that were correct, some of those responses were prompted, okay? Trial 1, 2, 3, 7, and 8. Some of the trials were correct and independent. He responded correctly before we prompted him. Okay, because remember, we are going to wait 2 seconds at this prompt step, prompting step 1, before we deliver the prompt. Okay, so when I'm asking him, what is your name? I'm going to wait 2 seconds before I prompt. In that 2 seconds, he could engage in a response that could be correct, yay, or incorrect, in which case I'll do my error correction. Okay, for that first trial, he did not respond after 2 seconds, so I delivered the prompt. Tom, nice job, Tom. Your name is Tom. I give him a high five. Okay, on trial 4, when I asked, where do you live? He beat the prompt. Where do you live? Massachusetts. That's right, you live in Massachusetts. High five. Okay, for trial 6, when I asked, what is your name? Maybe he said, I'm 6. Okay, he engaged in an incorrect response. Okay. Okay, so he responded correctly in 8 out of 9 of those trials. That's our 89% criteria. So for the next teaching session, we went from prompting step 1 to prompting step 2. Okay, we're now at a 4-second delay. Okay, based on our teaching procedure above. Okay, prompting step 2 is a 4-second delay. In this teaching session, we're seeing this teaching session that was implemented on October 27th. We see the student engaging in more independent correct responses. He also engaged in another error. Okay, so he engaged in 7 of the 9 trials correctly. Okay, he emitted a correct response in 7 of those 9 trials. He did not meet the criteria to feed the prompt. So for the next teaching session that happened the next day, we're still at prompting step 2. Does everyone understand why we're still at prompting step 2 for this last teaching session, or for this teaching session on October 28th? Okay, He engaged in 7 of the 9 trials correct here on 10/27, did not meet the 89% correct threshold to fail the prompt. So we're staying at prompting step 2. Okay. Now let's talk about what happened on October 28th. On October 28th, he engaged in 6 out of the 9 trials correctly. 6 correct responses. 3 of the responses in this 9 trial teaching session were incorrect. If I scroll up to the top to look at the prompt fading criteria, our criteria to give more help to go back a step in the prompting hierarchy is 2 consecutive errors or 3 total within a session. Our student Tom met that criteria here in this session. Okay, 3 incorrect responses over the course of those 9 trials. So when we teach again, we have moved back. I just scrolled down there to prompting step 1. Okay, we were on prompting step 2, a 4-second delay. Our student made 3 errors. We have now moved back to prompting step 1. Okay, we're offering a little bit more support, a little bit more help. Okay, we're prompting after 2 seconds versus prompting after 4 seconds. So we're reteaching at prompting step 1. Our student performs 9 out of 9 responses correctly. Okay, some independently, some with prompts. Okay, but he met that 89% criteria to fail the prompt again. So now we're back at prompting step 2. This time the student has performed correctly in 9 of those trials. Again, mixture of prompted responses and independent responses. So again, we are going to fail the prompt. We're now at prompting step 3. Okay, on this session here that was implemented on November 1st. Okay, prompting step 3 is our independent prompt step. Okay, we're not going to verbally prompt our student to answer the question that we are asking him. Okay, in this session, the student performed the first trial correctly, but trial 2 incorrectly and trial 3 incorrectly. Okay, we discontinued this teaching session because, I'm just going to scroll back up again, he met criteria to give more help, 2 consecutive errors. So he's making errors at the independent prompt step. If we completed the rest of the teaching session, he's liable to make more errors. So that's why we're stopping the teaching session at step 3. That's what that DC stands for. I am discontinuing the teaching session. Okay, we're going to go back to prompting step 2. That happened on November 2nd with teacher GM. We're prompting step 2 again. The student performed correctly, responded correctly in 9 out of 9 of those trials. Again, a mixture of prompted responses and independent. We are going to do something different for the next prompting step. I've been asked to stop for a second so everyone can catch up. Go over what I just said. I will be happy to do so. Oh, okay. For the rest of the session. Does anyone have any questions on what I just went through there? Because I'm going to ask you guys a question to respond. Let me ask everyone a question. Let's pretend you are the teacher about to work with our friend Tom here. Okay, you're looking at this data sheet that we have up on the screen, the data sheet that you hopefully have in front of you. If you were about to teach the next session, okay, this one here, okay, you're going to write in a step. What step would you be at? Okay, this last teaching session, the student was at prompting step 2. He responded correctly in 9 out of those 9 trials. Okay, which prompting step do you think he would be at for this upcoming teaching session that you're about to implement? I'd be happy for anybody to turn their mic on or pop the answer in the chat. David says prompting step 3. I hear some choral responding, prompting step 3. Everybody is correct. Okay, nice job, everybody. Thumbs up. We are going to be at prompting step 3 for this next teaching session. So we're back to the independent prompt step. Okay. Does anyone have any questions on how we got there? Okay. Going from our baseline sessions. Okay. When we're checking to see if the student can answer these 3 social questions. Okay. to starting teaching at prompting step 0, fading the prompt over time, some hiccups along the way, some incorrect responses when we faded the prompt, had to go back a step, moved back up a step, went back a step again, okay? Eventually got back to prompting step 3 for this upcoming teaching session that we're all about to implement, okay, in our pretend classroom. Everyone got that okay?
Cormac, I have a quick question for you.
Certainly.
So there's a lot of conversations going on around the tables, which is perfect. So maybe if it's okay with you, we can stop here. And if people have questions, we can ask through chat. Otherwise, let's work together for next 10 minutes or so, just among ourselves. Is that
Perfect.
okay? Just to what we just did. So can you please stand by for questions?
Yep, no problem. I will. Just got a question through the chat from Kristen. If we make a data sheet for a student and another student has the same goal, prompting level, etc., is there a way to copy the data sheet to another student without having to rewrite it? There is not. What I would recommend doing is copying the lesson over to the other student, and I'd be happy to demonstrate that right now if that works. You can edit lesson plans, but I would recommend that you copy the lesson over to the other student and work that way. Kristen, would you like me to show you how to do that while everyone is discussing what I just showed regarding data collection? Okay. The data sheets will, when you generate a data sheet from a lesson plan that you've activated, it will contain all the on the setup that you have. If you're adding in additional information, additional teaching procedures or information, editing the lesson plan or editing the data sheet is a good thing to do. I would try to put that stuff in the full lesson plan if you can, and then, like I said, copy it over to the other student if they're working on exactly the same skill in exactly the same way.
Thank you, Cormac, very much. We will be in touch. Somebody from our team will be in touch with you, Cormac. But
Okay.
thank you so much, everybody. That is going to conclude for today. If you have questions or anything like that, don't hesitate to ask.
Like me to start there? I'm stop there, Katerina.
So we're starting to wrapping up.
Okay.
But if you would like to hang out for a few more minutes,
Yep.
just
Certainly.
in case there's a question, but we're letting people go little by little.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah. I just asked Cormac to hang out for a second because that we have more questions. But we're asking people that they start.